I'm really excited to be here. We're doing a lot of things out at MoneyGuide right now that are really driving us to the next level of innovation. It's really exciting times. It's keeping us all very busy. But our end goal is always to bring more value to the advisor, make sure that they can improve on the amount of revenue they can drive with each and every client through ultimately improving their lives. So my name's Kevin Hughes. For those of you who do not know what we do out at MoneyGuide, we eat, sleep, and breathe goal-based financial planning. It's a really exciting time to do that. Got some great news this week. Yesterday we were voted #1 in financial planning through Investment News. It was the 8th year in a row, so that was an exciting email. My personal life, about 5 minutes ago, I found out my sister's having twins, so it's been a really good week. But what I want to talk about today is really everything we're working on, what we're doing now to help advisors deliver better advice to their clients, and of course, what we're doing going forward to bring more scale to that and to truly change and allow you all to adapt because, let's face it, technology's changing everything. It's changing it faster than we could have ever imagined before. The reality is that, over the last 150,000 years, man really didn't change much. Change was all local, it was all very linear. In fact, the average distance that somebody worked from their home was 1 mile. Does anybody know why that was? I'll go ahead and answer because I don't have that much time today. It was because that was as far as they could drag a carcass back to their home. That's how it was for a very, very long time. In a real short amount of time, literally we're talking 5, maybe 10 years max, things have changed incredibly fast. Change is happening at a very global rate across the entire world, and it's happening exponentially. So how do we all change that? Think about how much has changed in 5 years. Do you think 2 years ago that taxis would actually not have 50% of their fleets left? Uber did that in about 2 years through an incredible little solution, and most of you in this room probably use them today. I use them all the time. Anytime that I can rate somebody, the second I get out of that car to tell them what the service was like is a great thing. And it keeps them on their toes, makes the service well. And it's happening throughout all these other different industries. So we see research libraries being changed by Google. We just see it happening over and over. And we know things are happening in our industry as well. But for what we're thinking about at MoneyGuide is we look at all these other industries, and we see them being disrupted. So we sit back and ask ourselves, why don't we just disrupt ourselves while we're at it? Why wait for somebody to do that to us? So at MoneyGuide, what we're focusing on right now is how can we make advisors get more clients. Forget these chicken dinner seminars. They're expensive. They take a ton of the advisor's time. And what do they really walk away with at the end of that seminar? At best, they're getting maybe a couple of appointments. And they still don't even know if those appointments are actually going to drive a qualified lead. The other thing that we've seen in the industry is that any online tool that the client can go do and engage on their own before talking to an advisor is completely fragmented compared to the experience that they get when they actually meet with the advisor. So think of all the lead generation calculators, the online retirement calculators that you see on any kind of public site, any institutional firm for that matter. The experience that client goes through and what they end up sitting with the advisor and meeting on are two completely separate things, different results, nothing is integrated. They have to start all over from scratch. Maybe they went and did an online retirement calculator and it said they were good to go. And then they sit there and they meet with the advisor and it's a completely different story. We aim to fix that. The other thing we aim to fix is the fact that we don't really need to cut down 100 trees just to do one financial plan. These gigantic paper reports got to go. It's just, they're not motivating to clients. At the end of the day, what matters is that when you sit and you create something meaningful and you really articulate the client's goals to them, if you can do it in an engaging manner that's online, that's visual, that's interactive, it has meaning to it. It has to be personable to that client so that they're motivated to actually implement the plan. If they just sit there with a big stack of paper and throw it in the trash can when they get home, all they did was waste everybody's time. No value to the client, no value to the advisor, and certainly no value to the firm. It's another thing we aim to fix. And it all kind of started, we sat back and we looked at this advice chasm, if you will. We see this big gap between connecting advisors and investors. And there's a lot of stuff in the middle and why that gap exists. Let's face it, a lot of clients are really afraid to go speak with an advisor because they don't know what they're doing. They're afraid of looking stupid. It's completely understandable. This is complicated stuff. It's stressful, worrisome, they're afraid to get bad news, and they certainly don't want to tell every single thing about themselves in a financial perspective anyway, to somebody they might barely know. So there's this thing, and of course the Robos come along, and they try and offer a little bit better way of doing it. I don't know, you could actually debate better, but they create this bridge. They're trying to make that gap a little bit smaller by offering something that is free, though much less personable. I mean, you can fire a robo-advisor whenever you want. So we sat back and we thought about it, and we said, well, is this really the solution? The truth is, nobody really knows yet. I don't know if that bridge is going to break the second the market takes a downturn, but what I do know is that we can do something different to help with that. So we want to build the bridge the other way. So what we're going to do is kind of rip that mechanical heart out and change things up a little bit. We're going to build the bridge through an engaging planning process powered by our new system, MoneyGuidePro G4. This consists of 3 components. The very first one is a consumer-facing version of the software that's identical to the advisor-facing version, less a whole bunch of robust additional options that the advisor can take that relation to the next level. The second, of course, is a completely rebuild of our existing MoneyGuidePro advisor-facing software. The third is our new client acquisition system called My Money Guide. This is a guided lab where our CFPs, who also happen to be improv experts, so they make it fun, guide clients through a 90-minute interactive experience online, and the client is guided through walking through and creating their own plan. They're sitting there with a glass of wine at home in the privacy of their own home, building a plan where at the end, and actually the entire process, our instructors are branding your advisors as the person who has the know-how to actually implement that plan. So we get them all the way to the end. We don't give them advice. We save that for the advisor to do. This is something different. And this is the kind of thing that we want to do out at MoneyGuide. We want to create a way to connect an investor to an advisor that generates it through a series of smaller steps. Not everything they have to do all at once. We want to make it fun, and of course, we've always been focused on engaging and making things motivating. So I ask you this, as you sit there and think about it, ask yourself, these are all situations and concerns maybe that your firms are facing. How are you helping your advisors deal with this? I can tell you that there seems to be one constant. As we see lots of things change, as we see an aspect of our industry becoming a little more commoditized, we certainly sit back and wonder, how can we help? The one constant, every single article out there points at financial planning. So that's what we're doing. I'd like to talk to everybody while you're out here. What's your financial planning strategy for your advisors? How can we help? We have a lot of experience in this area. We've worked today with, this is just a sample of them, large firms, small firms, regional, independent broker-dealers, banks, lots of large RIAs, all the way down to the individual advisor. And we've generated millions of plans on the system with trillions of assets on the system. And I believe we can truly help you. And honestly, we're a pretty straight-up company. Any of you that worked with us, if we're not a good fit, we're going to come right out and tell you and guide you to somebody that might be a better fit for you. But I can tell you, the results that we've got in some of these firms is quite staggering. There's a lot of results on this screen. I'm going to focus on the 2 on the top left. First is impact to revenue. So this is one of our larger firms that reported this back to us. They found that the advisor doing on average 10 or more plans a year was producing over $400,000 in revenue over advisors in that firm that were not doing any MoneyGuidePro plans. That's a big deal. That's a 56% increase in revenue. The second one is the impact additional revenue across other segments of the business. Insurance and annuity products were up 200%. That's a really big deal. Even all the way down to advisory being up 34%. That's using planning to drive revenue across multiple channels in your firm, and that's what we're all about doing. They don't get it by doing the paper report, though. They come out to our offices, all our enterprise customers, our partners, and we sit with them. We really talk to them about the best ways to use the system with the client. And again, it is not those big paper reports. The advisors that are getting these kind of results are you doing planning in a different way. It's very goal-based, always starts with the client's goals. It's very dynamic. Everything's up on a screen in the conference room. If the client looks at the advisor and says, what happens if my husband or my wife dies today? What happens to our plan? They're not sitting there going back and rerunning the thing. They're moving a slider right there on the screen and answering the question immediately. has to be real time. Reality is the market shifts up and down nonstop these days. I mean, how do you deal with that? In all honesty, when the market drops 500 points, it really doesn't affect the client's long-term plan that much. So the client needs to be able to log in, or we need to be able to put our widgets on a client portal, so when they log in, they can see, all right, Dow dropped 500 points, but I'm still in my confidence zone. I'm still on track to meet my long-term goals. I'll go back to doing what I feel like doing and stop worrying about this. Real time's crucial. What we really have found, though, is more and more of our users use the system more interactively, is that the clients actually want to be involved in this. They don't want their financial plan created in some vacuum where all they do is just see the end result. They want to be part of the process. So co-creation and all of these components are all things that are driving the next version of MoneyGuide. But the reality is that these advisors are using our current version to do all this right now. For example, this is a feature we have called What Are You Afraid Of? Raymond James has had wild success with this. Almost all of their advisors put a big screen up in their conference room, and when they sit down with the client, they put this up on the screen. Now, this is an example of the client asking the question about what happens if they die early. They move the slider over. We instantly calculate the insurance required to solve this problem for the client. If they're worried about it, here's how much insurance you need to protect yourself against this concern. We do the same thing for living longer. If you're worried about living to 100, what's going to happen to your plan? I'm pretty sure that advisor has a solution to produce some guaranteed income for that client to protect them against that concern. We also are helping the advisors improve the quality and meaning of plans. How do we do this? Let's talk about healthcare and retirement, for example. This is an insanely expensive goal. I would argue that this is probably the second biggest expense in a client's life when they enter retirement. What's really scary is that advisors aren't talking about this. And there's really only two reasons why they're not talking about it. They're either afraid to deliver the bad news, or they just don't understand healthcare and retirement, which I completely get. It's complicated stuff. But the reality is that we make it easy for them. So we've helped a lot of advisors solve this problem. Let's take a look for a second. This client in this example happens to be retiring in about 3 years at 65 years old. Their Medicare Part B, Part D, Medigap, out-of-pocket expenses are going to be $11,179 each year. Now, take that into consideration and then add in the fact that the average inflation on healthcare costs is 6%. When this client's 75 years old, their healthcare expenses are going to exceed the income they're making off of Social Security. If they don't understand that and they don't know that, that's going to be a real big problem, and they're going to come back to the advisor. It's incredibly important that these types of things are included in plans for anybody that's 55 and beyond. We make it simple. We tell the advisor exactly what to say. We create dynamic, goal-based lifestyles so you can factor in the fact that these expenses are pretty costly. So we make it easy, and it doesn't end up becoming bad news. It becomes a value add. And this is the one advisor out of probably 20 that the client could have met with that actually took the time to have this conversation with the client. The other thing that our advisors and our best users are doing are including Social Security in that conversation into every plan they do. It's kind of wild when you start looking at all these strategies, and I know this has been a hot topic for probably 2 straight years now, but we do it a little different. We do it within the context of the plan. We make it real easy for the advisor to tell the client what that cost is when they walk through the door wanting to take Social Security at age 62. That's what most people want to do. This client, in this example, and I'm happy to show you a few back at the booth, would get about $600,000 more if they waited till age 70 versus taking Social Security at 62. If my advisor didn't tell me that, I think I'd be pretty frustrated. So we make it easy for that to happen as well. And the other thing that we're doing is analyzing Social Security within the context of the plan, because in some cases, it's not better for the plan, even if they are making more money off Social Security. So best not to do this analytical work in a vacuum, best to do it within the context of the whole plan. The third thing that we're finding a lot of advisors take advantage of is a feature we have called probability matrix. So what this allows you to do is analyze the client's plan and have the conversation around, can I be more conservative and still fund my goals? A very important thing to have and something that most advisors should be doing proactively right now. Why? Because the market's the highest it's ever been, less a few bumps in the roads we've had over the last couple of weeks. So to put it more clearly, what we do is we put every portfolio in the advisor's arsenal. We run the plan, so their probability of success, the Monte Carlo result, for every single portfolio they have. We show them the upside, we show them the downside, So we make it real easy for the client to sit there and say, you know what, maybe I could, move back to a balanced one and I won't have as much on the upside, but the reality is I'm exposed to a lot less if we go through something like 2008 all over again. Very powerful conversation, very easy to have with MoneyGuidePro. The last thing that I'll talk about that folks are doing in our current version of the software is a feature called Play Zone. This allows you to interactively maximize a client's lifestyle in retirement. And it's probably the most engaging feature we have in the software. And it's engaging because it allows the client to personalize their life. The advisors that have the most success with this tool, here's how they do this. They sit down with the client, they're in the meeting, or maybe they're doing GoToMeeting, doing it remotely, or they're letting the client log in and do it on their own. They put up the client's life, all their needs, their wants, their wishes, when they want to retire, how much they want to save across all their different accounts. The advisor looks at the client and says, I've created a recommendation for you, but you know what? It's just my recommendation. It's not yours. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee. Here's the mouse. Go change your life however you want it. You're going to instantly see the trade-offs, how it impacts your plan. And when I come back in about 5 or so minutes, let's talk about what you changed and if that's what feels right for you. So what they've really done is they've empowered the client to make some of these decisions. And they've made that plan truly personable to them. The key to all of this is making plans personal. The more personable they are, the more meaningful they are. The more meaningful they are, the more motivated the client is to actually implement the advisor's recommendations. So these are some of the things that we're doing today. And this is where I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the exciting things that we're doing moving forward. Let's face it, I think the industry as a whole has actually done a pretty poor job delivering plans to investors. I mean, I think it's a fair thing to say. I think there's a lot of investors out there. In fact, I'd say every investor needs and deserves a quality plan, and the vast majority of them aren't getting them. So how can we help with that? That's what we're going to do with G4. We're going to bring scale to planning and make it to where if an advisor wants to, they could deliver 100 plans in one night. And here's how you accomplish that. G4 will have 3 components. The first is a client-facing application. So you can put this in a client portal. You can put this on a retail website. The advisor could give client access through our client portal, however you want to deliver that. And you could determine how much information you really want to deliver. In fact, you can even reconfigure the software based off the type of user coming in. So if it's a millennial, I think the experience they should have from a planning perspective is significantly different than somebody 5 years from retirement or a 70-year-old widow. So we're going to make the software extremely configurable, and we call these guided conversations. These can be done at the client or the advisor level. The advisor-facing version will, of course, be built on all the time-standing features that we have today in the software, all the additional value-add features like disability, long-term care, estate, that's all there as well. And then, of course, My Money Guide, our new client acquisition system. So let's take a look at exactly what the user interface looks like. This will be the first time I think we've actually shown some of the new screens. So one of the things you'll notice with G4 is it's set up as a guided conversation. What we found in our 15 years creating financial planning software is that advisors need it just as easy to use as clients. They really do. So that's where we're headed. We want to make it so daggone simple that it's a story, and all somebody has to do is read the questions on the screen and move forward to create something truly meaningful. So this could easily be put right up on the big screen in a conference room from start to finish. Up to this point, we've done a great job with interactive features from the output perspective of the plan. Now we're going through the whole thing start to finish. So we'll take the client in a My Money Guide experience where we're educating them on what they should expect in retirement. If this is the consumer-facing version, they could come in and do this on their own. This is kind of the touchy-feely part of the planning process where you're just trying to get to know what they expect. These aren't monetary goals at the moment. And then we talk about what they're concerned about. This is probably this is the feature I'm most excited about because it's very customizable by the firm. And what it truly does is help you understand what the client is initially worried about. Are they worried about dying early? Are they worried about not having a paycheck anymore? What's cool about this is that when you click Done, it summarizes how the advisor is going to help the client solve those issues. So when you get to the end and you get to the recommendation, you know exactly what to clue in on because you know what's going to really connect with the client. From there, we switch over to goals. So we've created over millions of plans in the software. The thing that kills me the most is the average number of goals in a financial plan created by an advisor is 2.5. That doesn't motivate clients. And how do we fix that? So we said, maybe we got to make the goal entering interface more interactive. So that's where we're headed. This is all drag and drop. They can sit there with the client and have a meaningful discussion, and we're essentially aiding them and helping the advisor and the client better understand what types of goals they should be thinking about in retirement. It's not just $100,000 a year for 65 to age 90. It's where do I want to travel? Not just travel, where? Again, key is always make it personable. Does the kid want to go to college? Do they want to leave money or do any gifting? Do they want cars? A second car is probably the third biggest discretionary expense. Those should be separate goals in the system. Again, you're always trying to anchor that client back to something truly personable to them. So we're helping with this. What's interesting is that for the year and a half that we've been piloting My Money Guide, we spend about 20 minutes in that lab just on goals alone. And the average number of goals that clients are actually creating are 8. That's a huge difference. Now, I'm not going to make the case that the clients are creating 3 times better plans than the advisors. I'm not going to do that. But I can tell you that identifies one thing. The goals are truly what the client cares about. From there, we can go through all their basic data entry. We use aggregation through a variety of different sources. We pretty much aggregate or integrate with every single one that's out there. We do a great job with the Social Security in building out the client's net worth. And then we take them to risk. This is something we do a little unique as well. Risk tolerance is one of those really tough things. I mean, for the years and years and years, you give a client this risk tolerance questionnaire, 20, 30, 40, 50 questions. They don't know what half the questions are they're being asked, and somehow this thing is supposed to point to where that client should be allocated. We make it simpler than that. We ask the client and spouse, critical thing there, let's take them both into consideration. It's another thing that most risk tolerance questionnaires aren't doing, and say, why don't you do this? Answer me this one question. On a scale of 0 to 100, how risky do you think you are? Pick any number you want. It's completely arbitrary at this point. They move a slider, they instantly see what that actually means. So what does this mean? It means you'd be in a target portfolio that gets about 7.62% a year. Averages, here's how the allocation looks, but what does it really mean? That means that during the Great Recession, this portfolio was down 26%. That's $238,000 of your portfolio. What are you going to do when that happens? Are you going to hang in there, or are you going to sell? If you can stomach this and hang in there for the upside, then you're where you need to be. But if you're telling me you're going to sell, then you aren't actually a 60. We need to dial you back. Now, what's nice about this is if you address it at the client and spouse level, we're able to identify the differences in the two and actually pick a household level risk score. We'll then take it from there and show them how they're currently allocated, and most of the time they're way outside of their risk tolerance when you take everything into consideration. So there's a great conversation for the advisor to get back to the investment component of the conversation. From there, then we take it into, is the client okay or not? And most of the time they're not. Most of the time they need to make some suggestions. So in this situation, we come to the client's current scenario. A real easy way to actually explain Monte Carlo. Look, we ran your plan 1,000 times. 380 of those times we ran it, it was successful. It funded all your goals. The rest of the time, it didn't. So that's what a 38% probability of success means. Is this good enough for you? Most of the time, not. I'm not comfortable with 38% probability of success at all. So how do we fix that? Well, that's where our new recommendations page comes into play. So before we go to SuperSolve, which is a feature that optimizes the client's goals in one click in about 1 second and gets them where they need to be, we say, let's talk about some strategies first. Let's first see if we can find you more income through Social Security. How does that impact your plan? Then we go to guaranteed income. In this example, our client was worried about not having a paycheck anymore. So maybe being able to create some guaranteed income for them is something that would benefit them quite a bit. So with the guaranteed income module, you'll be able to go in and say, how much do I need to invest in a VA with a GMWB, SPIA, DIA, immediate annuity, fixed annuity, to be able to cover my client's immediate goals? Click done. That's now a strategy printed out in the executive summary of what needs to happen to make the plan work. We're literally putting every aspect of that client's life and what needs to make this plan work in an interactive, easy to understand experience. And we, of course, cover the target portfolio, which is really that probability matrix that I was talking about earlier. Maybe after they look at all this, they're willing to take a little bit more risk. Let's let them let's let them determine that. So there's a ton of things we're working on out here. The key is that all of this is very similar. be it they go through My Money Guide and we guide the advisors, clients, and prospects through this experience for them. They go to our client-facing version. It's going to look the same. If they want to take the relationship with the advisor to the next level, the advisor doesn't have to redo anything. They just literally log in, turn on more features to add more value. The other thing that we're doing, and we're probably behind on this project. I think we were actually supposed to have it released by now. We're going responsive design with the software. It's an exciting mobile strategy. So every single page in the system will instantly reformat whatever screen size you're on, be it tablet, Surface, iPad. They're all different sizes these days. So we're going through the system and just redoing the entire thing in a responsive manner. So it'll work on all your mobile device. It already works on all your mobile devices, but just make it more optimized for everything. Now, I talk about the configurability of the system. So on the advisor-facing version, there's a lot of stuff under the hood. I don't anticipate anybody to read anything that's on the screen. Bottom line is there's a lot of features. So we do the long-term care, disability, estate planning. We do planning strategies. What if I invest money into a guaranteed income, 72T distribution? What if I do Roth conversion? Some of that stuff, way overkill for the end user if they're a client. They probably don't need to really get into all that. So what we're going to do is, again, make it configurable so that you can have a guided conversation with a client, or the client can guide themselves through it on their own and have you there to pick up if they get lost in any way, shape, or form. So when you think about the advisor-facing version, where can we impact the firm? Where can we impact the different channels of your business? The advisor-facing side, again, all sorts of different overlays that you could do. If you want to have a conversation designed for millennials, great. You can reconfigure the software to do that. You flip a switch right in the very beginning, and it reconfigures the system instantly. Back office planning departments. We know that when a back office planning department is trying to do a plan for their advisors, they don't want a guided planning experience. They want to enter data as quick as they can. So we're going to have a very simple, quick data entry version for them as well. Trust departments, high net worth departments, they're going to want every feature under the sun. That's not a problem at all. However, for advisors or firms with plan members or employer plans, you might want a way to connect to them so you can uncover more opportunity and figure out which ones should maybe be working with the advisor. This is, again, where the configurability comes into play. Call centers as well is another critical one that we're hearing more and more from our clients on. And not to mention the client portal side. The client-facing side is a little different animal. You can have the system laid out in your retail website before you log into the software. At this point, the client can go in through everything. You're giving them a real motivating reason for them to actually say, look, I need to sign up on your site. I need to create a login so you can save all this. And of course, the second they save it, now you know who they are. That's lead gen. The question is, or lead generation, the question is what did they just did? Can you continue to use that and grow on that? That's what G4 is trying to deliver. And there's nobody really else in the industry doing that. Client portal, again, if they've already logged into your website, I'll call that the client portal for the sake of this conversation. That's where the client-facing side comes into play, and even employers' plans on the retail side as well. So I'll shift gears and talk a little bit about client acquisition and what this My Money Guide thing kind of looks like, because that's where you can really bring true scale to planning and honestly deliver 100 plans overnight if you really wanted to. So My Money Guide is something that we've been working on and piloting for 1.5 years now. It's gone through lots of different iterations. We're trying to get it just right. And we're about 2 weeks out from going full live production. In short, My Money Guide is a 90-minute lab. It's a guided planning experience where our CFP instructors take your advisors, clients, and most importantly, prospects through creating their own plan where your advisor is positioned as the expert to help them implement it. When the client gets to the end of the plan, they're presented with the option to either talk with the advisor, or even better, they can actually give the entire plan back to the advisor. If they click yes, at that point, we port the entire plan back to the advisor's license of MoneyGuidePro. At that point, that advisor is not only sitting with a very qualified lead, but a very motivated lead, because we just uncovered all the pain points for that investor. We're the nurse practitioner in this lab. We're not the doctor. We don't prescribe the medicine. That's what the advisor does. We just identify all the pain points and let the advisor take over and do what they do best. At the end of the year, we're going to be running these labs 24/7. If somebody wants to do a plan at 2 a.m. in the morning, go right ahead. will be able to factor for that. The other big reason we wanted to go 24/7 is because we have a lot of institutions that serve our service members in other countries across the world, saving us and keeping us free, and they deserve a plan too, so we want to be able to offer this around the clock to be able to help any individual across the world. There's about 26 steps in a My Money Guide lab. Let's say steps A through Z. Steps B through Y are pretty intense. We take care of all of them. The advisor does none of that. Step A is simply invite people to the lab. How do you do that? You leverage your current marketing strategies. All the advisor has to have is a hyperlink where they have a site that's branded to them. They can create different profiles. So if they want to market these lab opportunities to a plan or a 401k company that they work for, they can push this out, or if they're really smart, they'll leverage their contacts where they manage those 401ks and let the employer do that on their behalf. That way, they can create a profile that speaks specifically to that particular employer. If they have a radio show, if they're sitting on thousands of leads that they've created in their CRM that they've made no headway on over years, here's a great opportunity to re-engage all those folks. Now, what's really cool about it is that not only do we brand and position the advisor with their own custom website, but we've created a ton of different labs. I mean, like I said, with Money Guide, we don't feel that everybody has the same experience. I mean, 70-year-old widow should not have the same experience that somebody that's 40 years old should have. So we've generated different types of labs, and the advisor can pick and choose which ones they want to offer when they market this out. At this point, they push it out, client signs up or the prospect signs up for the lab, and then they get a login. So the client has a login with a timer, tells them when the lab's going to happen, single signs on right into Money Guide, but it's not just Money Guide. It's actually a proprietary system that we built where there's a lab instructor and a webcam and video screen up on the top left. The main screen is the client actually entering the data and going along. So a lot of people have asked us, like, why 90 minutes? Like, who's going to sit through a 90-minute lab? We thought the same thing. We started with an hour. We went to 90 minutes, and what we actually found were that 90% of the people sitting in this lab stayed on after the lab was over. They went to the play zone. They went to what are you afraid of? They sat there and entered additional information that they couldn't even get to during their 90 minutes. So we found that that was the most optimal time and the one that seemed to work the best for everybody that was attending. This is basically, I don't really think there's anything like this in the industry. I know there's not. And I'm ecstatic about what this can do to deliver planning across the broad scope of all different types of advisors that are out there. What I do want to be real clear about is that throughout this process, we do not give advice. It's not our job. We let the advisor give advice. That's the biggest key to this. So we're only identifying the pain points and trying to position that advisor as the person that can really implement this plan and really connect investors to advisors. So over the next couple of days, what I truly would like to do is I'm here, I'll be out on the boat tonight. I got these really expensive poker chips that I'm happy to give anybody, so you can try and win these drones that they're gonna have in the poker tournament. I'd love to talk about your planning strategy. I really wanna know what you're doing to help advisors with all the things they're facing out there. We have a lot of experience. We can probably help you. I'd love an opportunity to talk about that. We can help you scale. We can help your advisors compete. We can absolutely help advisors drive more revenue through planning. So my name's Kevin Hughes. I thank everybody for their time today, and I look forward to having an opportunity to meet everybody throughout the next couple days. Thanks.